It is great to be joined today by Dr. Adam Weigold, who is the CEO of a very interesting project, Cryptyk, which we've talked about before, which has two separate distributed platforms, Vault and Sentry. This might ring a bell for some of our viewers who have seen our previous videos about this. Thanks so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, David.
So let's first maybe start by identifying the problem that Cryptyk is working on, just to give everybody kind of a level playing field in terms of understanding what we're dealing with here.
Okay, well, cloud storage and cybersecurity, as everybody knows, we use it all the time, but the cybersecurity part is very costly and very ineffective. For every dollar that's spent on cloud storage, around about $4 is spent on cybersecurity, but this year up to $1 trillion will have been hacked by the end of this year. So basically, for a $150 billion industry, it's still occurring $1 trillion of losses, so it's obviously not working. And there's two main reasons why it's not working. One is that cloud storage is very centralized, so decentralization is a natural solution for that. And the other is that it's very complex. Typically, when an enterprise looks at cloud storage, they'll add 3, maybe 4 different cybersecurity products on top of that in a very piecemeal way. And this leaves lots of holes, lots of gaps, and there is no such thing as a complete solution for cybersecurity yet.
So for people who aren't as familiar with the intricacies of the risks and those holes that you talked about with cloud storage, what are the primary sort of exposures that exist with cloud storage as it exists today? Okay,
well, there's basically 5 main security threats. That's external threats from hacker syndicates and the like. Internal threats from employees is a very big one, up to 30% of all hacks. There's operational threats like server failure and denial of service attacks. There's obviously viral threats is a big one as well. And there's also surveillance or intercept threats, which are very targeted. So that's 5 threats you have to counter. And most cybersecurity products only counter against 1, maybe 2 of them.
So we're going to get into a little more detail about some of those specifically as we talk about the Cryptyk platform, but let's get into that now. Talk to us about, in a general sense, the solution that Cryptyk proposes.
Okay, well, most cybersecurity works on the principle of a very active or reactive philosophy, where they detect a threat and they try and respond to that threat. What we do at Cryptyk is we've built security into the storage at a very granular level. So our solution is very passive. Our general philosophy is we don't try and stop the hackers. We think hacking is an inevitable part of cloud storage. What we do is we try and make sure that anything they steal is useless to them, and it leaves breadcrumbs on the blockchain, so it's very traceable.
Okay, let's talk about how you make the data useless to hackers who might steal it. And there's a few layers to this. We've talked about the sort of division of files into 5 pieces. We've talked a little bit about the encryption. How can we start to sort of conceive of that?
Okay, well, basically what we do is we get a file, and when we upload that file to the cloud, we encrypt it first, and then we divide it into 5 separate shards using intelligent randomization. And each of those 1/5 or 20% shards is effectively useless to use. And then we encrypt each shard a second time, so there's 2 levels of encryption. And so you've got these 5 doubly encrypted pieces, and then we store them on 5 independent major cloud storage providers, including many of our partners, include IBM, Google, Amazon, Box, and the like. So basically, if a hacker breaks into any cloud storage provider, he has to break through 2 levels of encryption. And that might even take a quantum computer in the future. But even if he's successful, he only gets a useless 1/5 of the file.
For people who maybe in their day-to-day life use Dropbox or Google Drive, for example, they may not understand why, for example, banking institutions at this point have significant hesitation when it comes to cloud storage. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between me using Dropbox on a personal level versus the requirements that banking institutions would, for example, have before they would be comfortable using cloud storage?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is with cloud storage, if you go to just a single cloud storage provider, it's really got to do with the independence of each provider. But if you go to a single cloud storage provider, such as a Google or an Amazon, what they'll do, they'll never lose your data. There's no chance of them using your data because they'll make 200 copies of it and they'll store it in 200 different places all over the world. But that's a fundamental weakness because all a hacker has to do is hack into just one of those server nodes, and they have access not only to yours, but to thousands and hundreds of thousands of users' data. So that centralization is a core weakness of all cloud storage. And with our product, as I said, it's decentralized across 5 of the cloud storage providers. And what's important with our platform is not only that it's encrypted twice, but the encryption keys to access those files are not kept in the cloud. They're kept on the user's device. So the only way into any file is to hack the user's device, the user's PC or phone or whatever. So if you look at it from an enterprise scale, if you've got 10,000 employees, that means you have to hack 10,000 different employees' computers, which is an enormous task and nigh on impossible.
From the end user perspective, considering that files are encrypted, divided into 5 pieces, encrypted again, what is the end user process like? Does the end user suffer any inconvenience because of all of these things that are taking place, or does this all take place sort of in the background for the end user?
Oh, this is all takes place in the background. One of the key reasons why we decided not to use a blockchain to store files is because not only blockchains have a scalability problem, but they have a massive access latency problem. So there are companies like Filecoin and Sia who have tried to store files in the blockchain, and they have an access latency of 20, 30, 40 seconds or more. And that's 20, 30, 40 seconds just to wait to start the upload of a file, let alone to upload the file. And that means that type of cloud storage can't be used for 95% of cloud applications like real-time editing and the like, and collaboration applications. So the reason why we've used cloud storage providers instead of the blockchain for our decentralization is after we double encrypt them and shard them and everything, we've still got an access latency less than 200 milliseconds. So our platform basically works just like Google Drive, just like Amazon and iCloud. In actual fact, our prototype interface is very much based on the Google Drive interface. So users will be actually will be able to adopt it very quickly because it'll be just like a secure version of G Drive.
What's the role of the CTK token within this entire platform?
Okay, so that's our Vault platform, and our Vault platform protects against external, operational, and viral threats. Now, to manage internal and surveillance threats, what we do is we add a blockchain platform called Sentry, and Sentry doesn't store any files, but what it does is it makes a record of every user access event, every file sharing event, and it basically also approves the security profile of any user device and any sharing process. And to do that, as I said, it's powered by the blockchain. And we basically use the CTK tokens to power and pay for the operation of that blockchain.
How do you, as someone whose background is in quantum physics, get into something like this? I mean, it seems as though I can understand some of the crossover appeal maybe and sort of like the interest, but how does that happen?
Well, all my previous businesses were in the laser physics side of things, but I got into Bitcoin about 2012, and I bought at about $8. And around 2014, it was about $800. And I decided to sell. And then when I went to sell, I'd had some stored in various different places, including Mt. Gox and the like. and I had 80% of it hacked. And I just thought it was a ridiculous situation where you have this thing called an online currency and you can't store it online. It is an offline currency, if anything. So my first use case was actually how to, how to store a private key for Bitcoin online in a very secure way. So our first use case was Bitcoin private key split into 5 different pieces and encrypted, as a couple of extra layers of security. And then I met in Silicon Valley a very well-known hacker called Raghu Kotha, who used to run cybersecurity for Silicon Valley Bank. And he sort of picked up my idea and really ran with it. And he persuaded me it wasn't just Bitcoin keys that could be protected, but every single file type should be protected in this way. So we went from the world's most secure online wallet to the world's most secure cloud storage platform. And even though I must say, though, that in our alpha, which we're going to be released to the public via hackathon in the new year, our first app that we're laying in it is an ERC20 wallet that's going to be the world's most secure hot wallet. So that will be just one app that sits on top of our platform.
What do you make? I mean, since I have you here, I'm curious, what do you make of the rise of Bitcoin all the way up to, I think it was right around $19,000 last December, if I'm recalling correctly, down to where it is now, and a lot of discussion about whether this is it or whether this is just another 80% decline before you have another multiple orders of magnitude increase. Do you have a strong view one way or the other? Does it matter for the types of projects that you're involved in?
I hate to be a pessimist, but my view of Bitcoin is fairly negative. As I said, I've been involved with it for 6 years, but it's really lost its utility. And its previous historical behavior was based on utility and adoption. So the price increase was driven by more people using Bitcoin for transactions. Now it's become a store of wealth rather than a payment system. Now it's relatively slow compared to modern banking systems now, so it's lost its major advantage. It is a store of wealth, but I think it will behave much more like gold as a store of wealth than what we come to expect from utility tokens. And I should point out that one of the reasons why we've set up ourselves as a utility token is because the way we've designed our platform is we basically automatically buy back our own tokens from the market with our revenues, right? So, or our gross profit from the revenues. And what that means is every time we get a new user, a new customer using our platform, it will automatically have a direct effect on the CTK token price and drive that up regardless of market sentiment. And I think that's a fundamental point of utility that a lot of people actually overlook, is that a true utility, the token price or the cryptocurrency price, is directly dependent upon usage and participation on that platform rather than market speculation. And that's certainly how we've designed CTK. And I think that the same thing, look, I hate to be negative about Ethereum, but I think Ethereum is going to hit that same problem as Bitcoin even earlier, because Ethereum's one big use case is token sales like us. And the cryptocurrency world is moving away from utility token sales, and there are competitive platforms out there. There's also security token offerings that are now displacing utility tokens. So I think with Ethereum, what we've seen is it's had a really good use case for a couple of years, but we've seen the peak, and I don't think Ethereum can come back. I see Ethereum maybe going back up to $200, but I think it will be in that $50 to $200 range for the next year. My view of Bitcoin is I think it will drop down to about $2,000 probably by January. There's a lot of shorts going on in Ethereum Bitcoin, and I think it will start rebounding come February, and I think Ethereum will start rebounding come February. But I think we've certainly seen the last of huge growth rates and ROIs in many multiples. And I think the only way you can actually do that now is with the new utility tokens coming out that haven't realized any of their potential. I think Bitcoin and Ethereum have realized their potential, and that's been priced in.
All right, a lot to think about there for sure. We've been speaking with Dr. Adam Weigold, who is the CEO of Cryptyk. You can learn more about the project by using checking out the links down below in the video description. Adam, so great speaking to you today.
Lovely to speak to you, David. Thank you.